Welcome to the Commend Journey. You're here at our Commend USA office in very chilly Mahwah, New Jersey. I'm Renata, the marketing coordinator here at Commend Americas. Today, I am here with our Eastern District Manager, John Carmichael. Good to see you today.
Great to see you as well. You think this is chilly? I think this is very nice.
Please tell us what state you are coming from.
State of bliss.
State of bliss.
I live in New Hampshire. So New Hampshire, just north of Boston.
So this frosty morning is really nothing to you.
I can live with this. It's not snowing yet.
First off, tell us about your experience and background.
Well, I've been at Commend for closing in on 5 years. Been in the industry since 2007. My background is a unique and winding road in this industry. So I really started in networking equipment, structured cabling, Category 5 when it was Category 5 cable, and connectivity products, patch panels, and those types of things. I moved into IT security from that. Spent a fair amount of time in there, 7 years in IT security. And then I made a leap to this industry. And my very first foray into physical security was with a company that's no longer in existence. It was called Video IQ, and they were acquired by Avigilon down the road. But doing video analytics at the edge and doing processing at the edge, as well as storage of some video events at the edge. So that processing, that distributed processing, has become more commonplace since then, and certainly video analytics have become very commonplace. So that was an interesting introduction to the market, starting there. And with that IT background and the structured cabling background, I came in 2007 when really this industry was just starting to adopt IP devices. There were only a couple of companies doing IP cameras at that time, and very few companies doing IP beyond that. And now obviously it's exploded to where it is today. It's been an interesting run. And that journey's taken me from video to access control to now communication.
Tell us a little bit about that transition from digital to IP.
Well, it was a journey, right? So when this started, video was recorded. If it was recorded at all, it was recorded on video recorders, analog video recorders. That evolved into digital video recorders, DVRs. And then you started getting into a desire to make some sense of the information that was coming out of that. And then video management systems started coming into the picture as well. So that journey, again, started with analog, and as IP cameras became part of that equation, a few things happened. One, people determined they needed to do something with that video. First, it was forensic evidence, and finding important information very quickly became a part of the initial conversation. But then proactively preventing something from happening before it could happen became a very important part of that as well. So trend analysis, but event triggers was really the key step with video analytics at that time. And that really led to not just forensic recording of events, but then how do I prevent that from happening with audio too? And then audio became a part of that piece as well. It's, hey, you with the red shirt, you're trespassing on private property. And that led, of course, to advances in the camera and the communication side as well. The PA systems, blue light phones, intercoms, et cetera.
What were some of the changes in the way that companies and security operators were thinking about security at that time?
Well, again, it started with forensics, determining what happened, and then that evolved into how do we prevent that from happening. So it was shortening that gap between when we know something's happening and then our response to that. So the response piece was the key leap for this industry, going from, a security officer walking a guard tour, identifying when an event is happening, to having technology do that. And that became a force multiplier. Because once you had technology that could identify that event and then react to that with preventative measures, well, that changed the industry, right? Because now you don't have to have a security team on site. You can have a remote guarding office. You can have a GSOC in a different state or a different country. It became a whole different scalable way to secure facilities.
And tell us a little bit about the changes in the industry in between the different decades. So you were entering into the industry around 2007. So how did that change going into the 2010s and then later on into the 2020s?
Yeah, so I came from IT. So for me, I had a little bit of a head start. I knew where the future of the industry was before the industry, in some ways, knew it themselves. When I came into this industry, people were still using 2-wire analog systems, 4-wire analog systems. The industry was a little bit slow to adapt. So media converters were a big step forward in that respect, but also hybrid recording stuff. Like Exact used to have a hybrid recorder that was both analog and IP, similar to what we can do with our chassis on the Commend side. That was a migration path towards IP. And now really it's either all IP, or in the cases where it's analog, it's because the infrastructure is prohibitively expensive to rip and replace. So that was a big step forward from 2007 to today. And then it's just a matter of how the technology has changed year to year. And you go to an ISE West and you see where people are taking things. So when I first came into this industry, the largest advances were in video. We were going from analog cameras to IP cameras to megapixel cameras to cameras with integrated video analytics, to where we are today with cameras, 360-degree megapixel cameras that can process an event and alert somebody very quickly. That happened on the audio side as well, right? So we went from basic low lux, or in case of communications, a low kilohertz experience audio, to where we are now with high def, high kilohertz audio. And that's very much in line with what happened with the video, right? So the video went from low lux to high def or high megapixel experiences, and adjusted to the compression of that video along the way. And now we're seeing that with audio as well. People are used to high audio experience in their media, but they're not necessarily accepting that in their security systems or the communication systems in their offices. And people are catching up on that, right? Over the last 5-10 years, companies are organizations are insisting that they get something a little bit better than that low kilohertz experience they were getting before.
So what would you say are the biggest roadblocks that you see in making that transition from the low kilohertz to the higher quality audio?
The largest part of that is education, right? It's helping people see that very inexpensive solution that seems to be doing the same thing is on the same level as the high kilohertz, high audio quality solution is. And that's an education process for the entire industry. It's helping people see that, this is not the same as that. And that's exactly what happened with video. Video went from, we have a camera, that's good enough, right? To, well, we really need to be able to have forensic detail here. And it's the same with audio, right? You want to be able to hear somebody that's talking. And it doesn't take more than one event to have that become very clear to you, right? So you pull up the diesel truck, you can't hear somebody talking at the gate. That's a problem. And then you find ways to address that problem. One way to address that is you add on a horn speaker, right? Which makes everything very loud. But a better way to do that is to begin with a high quality intercom that can detect that ambient noise change and raise and lower automatically, while also providing a high kilohertz experience, like a conversation between you and I at the moment, right? So that is a game changer when people hear the difference. So it really comes down to education and helping people hear the difference in the two.
And what are some of the biggest misconceptions that you've come across when encountering people who are looking to upgrade their security and communication systems?
One is it's overcoming what they believe is possible with what they've had, right? So a traditional intercom system, for instance, was just a substation at the door talking to a master station at the desk. Very simple. And you might duplicate that and have multiple masters or multiple substations, but they're all basically doing the same thing. What becomes possible, and that's that education piece, is saying, well, what if that person at the desk is not there because it's a holiday or because they're taking their break? Where does that call go now? And what if that call could go to another state at a GSOC just by simply forwarding that call after a number of seconds? What if we could scale that beyond just a point-to-point intercom system to expand to your entire facility? What if we could do that with your entire organization across the globe? And scalability becomes an attractive part of that solution. And it goes beyond intercom at that point too, right? Because now, what if we include the public address system or the blue light phone system? What if we incorporate your voice over IP phone system? And now suddenly you're thinking in possibilities, right? It's a unified communication system that goes beyond intercoms point to point to include every piece of your communications equipment. And that could be well beyond Commend, right? Commend is a large part of that, but that could be your VMS, your access control system, your building management system, your radios, your voice over IP phones, and many other systems.
I'd like to return back to phones. As we all know, everyone has a cell phone in their pocket these days.
Sure.
So there are plenty of people out there who say, why do I need intercom? Why do I need all of this hardwired stuff when everyone just has a cell phone? What would you say about that? What is the application of intercom in the modern cell phone era?
Well, there's a couple of ways to answer that. The first notable one is reliability, right? So the reliability of your phone system is only as good as the connectivity, right? If you're not on the Wi-Fi or you're not in a cellular area, that might be problematic for you. I've visited plenty of college campuses where whatever carrier you have is not working in a particular part of the campus. I've been into reactors and containment rooms in reactors where my cell signal just completely goes away. I've also been in highly secure environments where I'm not allowed to carry my phone in the first place. And how do you communicate at that point? So that's one piece of it is the reliability of your system is really only reliable as the connectivity of that device. But think about duress, right? If I'm under duress in a parking lot and I reach for my phone and I'm tackled and my phone scatters across the parking lot, what's my out now? How do I communicate with people? By having a blue light phone system, if I'm under duress and I scream, somebody might hear that scream and push the button on the blue light phone saying, hey, there's something happening in the parking lot. But the technology can also pick up on that, and the analytics within our system can detect that scream and make that an event trigger to tell people, hey, there's something happening here. So that's another piece of it. As far as the cellular technology, look, I love my phone as much as anybody. It serves a valuable purpose, and we have a solution uh, for extending communication to the cell phone. But there are other times when you need a fail-safe, high assurance, high quality audio experience, and that's where an intercom or a public address system or a blue light phone become very valuable for you.
Tell us a little bit more about cell phones connecting with intercom. How do these two work together?
Yep. So there's a couple of ways. The traditional way would be using an analog gateway and having it call to your phone, just like it would call your phone in your office, right? That's one way to do it. Just dial a phone number, pick up the phone, and have a conversation with somebody. That's very basic. We can do that as well as anybody. The more attractive way, and the way that really is the future, is having full situational awareness. Having an app on your phone, have a push notification that says, hey, there's somebody at the front door, and having the ability to look at who's at the front door with video, scroll between the video on the intercom and maybe another camera that's in the lobby for full situational awareness. And then from that, determine whether to let that person in or have a conversation with them or whatever needs to happen there. That becomes very flexible for you. And now you're answering a call really anywhere in the world if you wanted to. So if, for instance, we were closed because of a snowstorm, but we had a delivery that came to the front door, somebody could call you at your home, but just by pushing the intercom button and then having you open the door to let them deliver that package if it's appropriate to do so. So that becomes a level of flexibility that you didn't have before. And you might be asking about this, but because I certainly did. What if somebody grabbed your phone, right? Is there a security issue there? Well, we are using your biometric signature on that phone or a PIN code at minimum to be able to authenticate the user on that phone before they can unlock that door. Right? So that's a key part of this as well, as using Face ID or a Touch ID or a PIN code to be able to unlock that phone to be able to now engage with that person that's at the door.
You've talked a lot about a lot of different options that are currently out there in the industry. So if I'm a customer that has hardwired intercom from the 70s or 80s and wants to upgrade, I might be overwhelmed with all of the different options that are currently available. So my question for you is, if I'm completely new to this industry and I'm overwhelmed, where do I start?
Well, you start by calling command, of course. But so there are different ways to upgrade your communication system. First of all, you may have a system that's acceptable for you. You might have an analog system that is working fine in some applications and less desirable than others. We have the ability to leverage that existing system to a certain extent. Sometimes that means taking over existing systems that are in place. Most often it means using the existing infrastructure where it's appropriate to do so. But really where I start with any customer is identifying where the gaps are. What's your desired state? What do you want to have for communications in your facility? Where are the inefficiencies? Where are we having problems communicating with people? And then from that, you can start creating a plan for chipping away at that gap and then closing that gap. So that might mean a forklift in some cases, but most often it means you start with the areas that are of most pressing concern for you, addressing those. And then as other needs come up, you start to grow from that. So, Commend has a reputation for being an enterprise level solution because we can scale to be as big as you need us to be. But we can also start very small with just a simple SIP compliant intercom at the front entrance that communicates to your voice over IP phone system, or in some cases to a competitive solution. And then you can use that as an entry point to grow to whatever you want it to be.
Tell us about your first major or memorable Commend project.
First, or most memorable, because there's been some good ones on both sides. So I just had a prison project that just wrapped up recently where they were using analog wiring. They needed anti-ligature intercoms in each cell, and they needed to use the existing 2-gang space that was there, and they needed to have that cell basically turnkey so that they could go into that cell while that inmate was away, their break, get everything wrapped up and have everything in place when they got back to that cell. So it was an immediate, quick turn project, right? You needed to have everything kitted properly and ready to go. So Commend went in with was our S6, which goes up to 448 subscribers, with hundreds of cells using 2-gang intercoms, audio only. And we were able to wrap that up for them very quickly. So that was a win for both professional services as well as taking an existing analog system, using as much of that infrastructure as possible while bringing them into the future. So that was one. Something smaller would be a project I did at a cancer treatment facility where they used Commend intercoms in a space with high white noise, high variability in terms of the noise in that space. And we put in a simple SIP serverless application. We had a master station in nurse technician's office. And then we had in the treatment room, just a simple horn speaker, a projection speaker with a microphone. And just with a simple gooseneck mount microphone, they were able to do a push to talk to the patient, assure them that everything was okay because it was a high stress environment for that patient, and then have that patient be able to talk to them very clearly. And this overcame a lot of problems that they were having with that noise, right? That high variability noise was a real problem for them. And we were able to eliminate that altogether and take all the stress out of that communication for them on both ends of that conversation. And that very same application, I mentioned before, we did a nuclear containment walkthrough. They have the same issue, right? They have high white noise and high variability in the noise. And that very same situation, they're going to be able to resolve that with this.
Tell us a little bit also about your work with our partner, Galaxy Integrated Systems.
Galaxy is a great partner. They've got innovative solutions that are both IT secure. They leverage technology that on the access control side that is innovative in the market. And from a technology integration standpoint, we have exceptional integration with them. I've got a project going with them now, a different correctional facility that is using Gallagher as the head end. They're using Commend as the intercoms, and we have full integration with that solution. So that's just one example of that technology partnership working extremely well.
All right. And last question. Tell us a little bit about integrations and what are some of the most notable benefits that you can see integrating Intercom with other technology solutions?
Yeah, so integration is a key part of our identity, right? So Commend is the core of a unified communication system. Certainly, we believe so. But we don't do everything, right? We don't do everything, and other partners, technology partners, do exceptional things with their technology. And by taking the two disparate systems and unifying them with integration, you're creating something bigger than the two of them separately, right? And we've seen this over and over again. We're doing this in healthcare. That's just one example, the Gallagher one I mentioned before. We each have our own strengths. And by bringing that together, we're creating something that wasn't possible before, which becomes very exciting, right? So now we're taking what might have been a very siloed solution and making it far more open and unified.
All right. Thanks so much for your time. And thanks very much for your insight in the industry.
Happy to be here. It's great speaking with you.
All right. Thanks for joining us on this leg of the Commend journey. Tune in again and you'll be seeing other solutions, other insights in other industries. We're looking forward to it.